This is things I wish I could say in Sunday school. I want to share some thoughts and ideas that are different than what we usually hear. My goal is to be really honest rather than inherently faith-promoting. I hope these ideas may spark some interesting discussions with your friends, families, or classes. Please enjoy. This is the lesson for June 30th through July 6th and July 7th through 13th. Doctrine and Covenants, section 71 through 76. Today's topics are coping with church criticism, church roles evolution, and afterlife vision. Section 71 is a response to Ezra Booth. I discussed him 2 episodes ago. You can refer back there for a more complete description. Basically, he witnessed a woman's arm being healed by Joseph Smith and was told he could heal people through the priesthood as well. He tried to heal people just like he saw Joseph Smith heal them, and it failed Ezra every time. So his belief about that first healing he witnessed had to change. The foundation and faith in Joseph Smith's teachings wasn't what he thought it was. He wrote critical letters that were published in an Ohio newspaper. Section 71 tells Joseph Smith to put his translation of the Bible aside and go preach. It seems like Booth's letters gained some traction in the area. This brings up the topic of coping with church criticism. The church itself does a terrible job coping with criticism. Here are some examples. The church hid the practice of polygamy. When criticized for it publicly by a paper, Joseph Smith directed the destruction of the newspaper printing press, sharply escalating tensions that later culminated in Joseph Smith's death. The Nauvoo Expositor published the truth that Joseph Smith wanted to remain secret. It wasn't until 1852 that a church leader mentioned the practice publicly. In more modern times, the church excommunicated the September 6 church scholars. They published actual research, but some of it was unfavorable to the church, and so the church excommunicated them to send a message. This was around the time that Boyd K. Packer stated that the greatest threats to the church were homosexuals, feminists, and intellectuals. Oh, and the church lied and stated these excommunications were local disciplinary matters, when it was clearly directed from the top to X 6 prominent scholars in a single month. With increased access to information on the internet, many people learned that the church has a long record of obfuscating and lying about its real history. To cope with this criticism, the church eventually published its gospel topics essays. These actually acknowledge that the church knows many major criticisms are valid, but the essays still do major spin on these topics, and while they are available, you have to search for them and seek them out. The church still tries to hide the information somewhat. It knows it can't get away with lying about these topics anymore, but they really don't want the membership to learn about it either. The lesson manuals follow this same pattern. The manual gives a whole lot of spin on a topic, but if you click on the footnote, then you get more of the real history, and any halfway intelligent reader can see that the manual is spin, trying to sell a false narrative. And this is all just within the manual's own footnotes of church history. The church continues to excommunicate members who are critical of the church, when they get a big enough audience. John Dehlin of Mormon Stories, Kate Kelly of Ordained Women, Sam Young, who advocated for child safety in church interviews, Natasha Helfer, a therapist who taught that masturbation was developmentally normal, and just last fall, Nemo, I guess, had gotten a large enough YouTube following that the church X'd him. He just advocated for the church to be honest and pointed out documentation where the church was dishonest. What's crazy is that the church does make changes because of public critique, while at the same time it tries to intimidate future advocates for change by excommunicating the present disruptors. The gospel topics essays were in response to more members learning the real church history, like through John Dehlin's Mormon Stories podcast. Women aren't receiving the priesthood, but sister missionaries can wear pants. Women were finally allowed to pray in general conference. Moms can be an official witness of their children's baptisms, and some misogynistic language in the temple has been updated. Oh, and women are really excited about finally getting sleeveless garments. And the church policies for youth interviews changed in the wake of Sam Young's campaign. Suffice it to say, the church doesn't know how to cope well to criticism. A mature way to receive criticism is to listen compassionately, acknowledge where the criticism is valid, make and share a plan to address the problems, follow up and repeat. It's basically the pattern that we teach for repentance, but done at an institutional level. I believe the church has the capacity to do these things, but the men in charge are so removed from reality that they don't see their massive failings in this arena. These are not men used to being challenged in any way. They resent it and respond defensively and poorly. Or they try to do what Joseph Smith does here in section 71, distract and redirect the message to what they want. I've also spent time thinking about how we as individuals cope with church criticisms. Depending on how entrenched we are within the church, we usually respond with mental gymnastics. We spin stuff in our own minds so that our beliefs aren't really changed. Then we put it out of our minds and focus on other stuff. Totally normal coping mechanism. Or we doubt our doubts like Uchtdorf encouraged us to. Again, this is a short-term coping mechanism, not a reasonable long-term strategy. Honestly, for myself, I don't know if I'm presently employing the best coping strategies. In a way, this whole podcast is a way for me to cope with my own criticisms of the church, while also expressing my present and developing spirituality. I cope by being publicly honest about the problems I see, and I hope some of the good too. This stuff is hard, and I try to view the way everyone copes with this stuff compassionately. There is no clear, correct way. We all have to navigate our own way through these stages of faith. We can at least be compassionate to each other and give each other the space we need. The next topic is how church roles evolve. Section 72 is about how Newell K. Whitney is to be a bishop in the church. It mainly had to do with property. We have dramatically changed this role in the church over the decades and continue to. Bishops are now much more pastoral. The role of a bishop in the church now is nothing like what it was for Newell K. Whitney. I highlight this to note that there is a huge amount of precedence for roles in the church evolving way outside of what's prescribed in the Doctrine and Covenants. The church promotes the idea that every change it makes is to bring it into greater consistency with the original church. That idea is false. I think they do go back to the records when they decide to make updates to see how they can sell it best. But the fact is that the church adapts to pressures and changing needs. It has to. And frankly, it needs to start adapting a lot more quickly because the active membership is shrinking. Start with calling women to be Sunday school presidents and ward clerks. We have women performing stake audits on ward clerks. It's ridiculous that women are barred from these roles. Then keep the changes coming. The only change I've seen in the last decade that excited people was going from 3 hours of church on Sundays to 2. That's not a great indicator on the current health of the church when less church is the only thing that excites the masses. The last topic I'm going to cover is section 76. This is Joseph Smith and Sidney Rigdon's vision of the three kingdoms. I want to share what my beliefs are regarding an afterlife. I taught the whole Latter-day Saint plan of salvation, diagramming out the whole pre-existence, veil, mortal/earth life, death, spirit paradise or prison, then resurrection, judgment, and placement into one of the three kingdoms, celestial at the bottom, terrestrial in the middle, and celestial at the top. Now my beliefs include a lot more unknowns. I believe we all existed before being born. I believe we are all children of heavenly parents, and I have a strong belief in Heavenly Mother. I don't really buy the whole war in heaven, and I don't believe Satan is an actual being conspiring against our heavenly parents for our souls. That stuff just doesn't make sense. The afterlife is less clear to me than the pre-existence. One idea that does resonate with me is that there is an afterlife. Basically, I believe that as children of heavenly parents, we have the potential to become like them. I know to a lot of people that sounds blasphemous, but to me it just makes sense. How exactly it works, I don't know. I think Joseph Smith got correct that there isn't a hell. There is no sinners in the hands of an angry God type of place. I also think there will be immense diversity in the afterlife. Three kingdoms doesn't make sense to me either. In my Father's house are many mansions does. Like even within the same family, there will be a huge variety of opinions of what makes the best vacation. Some people love an all-inclusive beach resort. Others think hiking and camping is ideal. Some prefer being at a lake or on a mountain. Some people really like cruises or amusement parks, or some just want to stay home and relax. I just believe that the afterlife will be good for us, catered to what we need. And I believe there will be immense variety in what that is for each of us. I also believe in eternal progression, in that our souls are not done evolving after this life. But I do believe that our time in our mortal bodies is special. I think being embodied allows for immense experience and growth. I believe that the closer we become like our heavenly parents while on earth, it will be immensely beneficial to us in the afterlife. I believe that the close relationships that we cultivate in this life will continue in the afterlife if we choose for them to. I don't believe there is some magic sealing power that will make some people stuck with other people if they don't choose it. So I believe that my wife and I will be together after this life because we will choose to be, not because we were married in the temple. Anyway, this is a small description of some of my beliefs about the afterlife and where I've landed after letting go of the strict Latter-day Saint plan of salvation belief. Honestly, my belief in diversity in the afterlife sounds a lot more like heaven to me than any depiction of the celestial kingdom ever has. Mormon heaven, if you sit down and think about it, isn't very appealing. It sounds exclusive and quiet and boring. Basically, if you're top-tier celestial kingdom and a man, you will have to have multiple wives. If you're a woman, you will have to share a man with multiple other women. And I guess pump out spirit children for the next iteration of mortal life or something. But it's all good because everyone is just so godly. My response is no thanks. Not a place I want to be for eternity. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Please share with family and friends. Until next time.